Tri-Ace is back, and with a brand new Star Ocean game that might just turn the tables around for them. If you're an old-timer like me, you likely grew up playing Star Ocean as one of the classic JRPGs of the golden era. It may be a bit more niche than other games in the genre, but it's still a series I think that can still deliver quality. Probably something that's hard to believe given their recent bumpy track record. However, the Divine Force is here to say that The Last Hope wasn't really their last hope. It's by no means a perfect game, or even a great one, but it's a noticeable step up from their last Star Ocean game. There were a lot of things I liked, and just as many things I didn't like, but overall, I had a good time. The inclusion of a flying mechanic using the robot Duma did wonders for the game, setting it apart from other generic titles and giving it a unique identity. Along with being incredibly useful in combat, it added a nice way to traverse the world. In fact, it reminded me a bit of the flying in Dragon Ball Kakarot, which I loved. The initial enthusiasm quickly wore off though, because of how bloated the world feels. The wide open fields seem plain, as if there was something missing. It caused flying to feel more like a requirement to get through areas quickly and effectively, rather than promoting the feeling of freedom. I mean, why fly, if not for the ability to see the world from above and enjoying the proverbial wind in my face? It's not like developers didn't try to make it interesting either. Monsters are scattered about, with some world bosses sprinkled in for those looking for an early death. Shards used to advance Duma's abilities are spread out along different flight paths and can potentially lead to treasure. There are even small puzzles that require some good flight executions to solve. Yet none of these things worked well together to create an enjoyable experience. They were just separate tasks to mark off on a checklist when arriving somewhere new, and checklists are never fun, unless you're some sort of psychopath. When it comes down to it though, the biggest problem was caused by my own doing. Despite likely never getting the platinum, I attempted to get as many trophies as possible, which required finding all the chests in the universe. They're impossible to see, so I spend most of my time slowly scanning through every inch of the map with Duma, and that gets tiring real quick. I didn't actually feel like I could explore at my own leisure until the maps became more narrow. When I see that it isn't just a giant black hole of nothingness, I get so relieved, which is not something you want players to feel. Dungeons were pretty much the only place to fit this criteria, and were actually designed fairly well. They had multiple pathways and interesting puzzles to boot. I only wish it was a little longer and more intricate, since it didn't take too long to get through. I miss the days when I would get stuck in a dungeon for hours. I still remember the door puzzle in Tales of Destiny giving me a massive headache, but thinking back on it, I've come to appreciate that experience even more. Outside of exploration, the extra leverage Duma provides with his flight abilities make combat leaps and bounds better than any other before it. So much so that I felt naked when I didn't have it. Charging in and surprising enemies is a great way to start engagement, and it's the one thing I never get tired of doing. The benefits are even more apparent on higher difficulties when enemies are built like tanks, especially the bosses, so learning how to blindside foes for that extra damage makes life so much better. AP also gets increased, which expands the combo potential. As a game that aims to have fast-paced combat, this system actually hinders it at times, which is strange because Tales of Arise has a similar system, but it never felt like it was affected in the same way. The cause likely stems from how punishing it feels to get hit by attacks. I lose AP, and if I get knocked into the air, I have to wait an eternity before I can get back into the action. That said, most of the time combat did feel like how developers intended it to feel. There were projectiles everywhere, enemies were deadly, and flying made the pacing feel like I was in an intense high-profile anime fight. In addition, having the flexibility to create custom combos helped a lot to make combat engaging. Instead of having the same basic attack string with a unique skill finisher, 3 buttons are customized to execute their own combo variations. This newfound freedom to do the types of attacks I wanted felt great, though between you and me, I only spammed the most powerful moves because it works better. Still, it was nice to see characters have a variety of options at their disposal. Well, most of them do. They did Albar dirty when they only gave him 6 attacks, while other characters have like 20 and can't all fit on the bar. New skills are unlocked through the massive skills tree. The first time I saw this thing, I immediately closed it because I just wanted to play the game instead of wasting precious time staring at a menu. Most of it though is filled with fluff stat boosts that didn't really feel rewarding to unlock with my hard-earned SP. They make a difference, sure, but it's one of those things I had to do for the sake of progression, like buying new equipment every time I reach a new town, or telling people to smash that like button and subscribe for their YouTube algorithm. Generally speaking, the Divine Force has pretty good gameplay, but my favorite part has got to be the minigame Asoa. Not only is it unlike anything I've played before, the pieces used also reference characters from previous Star Ocean games, which I think is pretty cool. The game is easy to pick up and despite its simplicity, was a battle of wits.
In that case, I challenge you to a battle of wits.
I had a lot of fun figuring out how to outplay stronger opponents to rank up, and it served as a great distraction from the story when it was dragging on. I think the pacing of the story would have felt better if I could actually skip the dialogue instead of having to watch through the entire scene. YouTube's double playback speed and Kiseki's turbo mode has completely ruined me. I basically live life at 2x speed now. It's hard to stay focused at times with the dull dialogue, and the lack of interesting animations made it a snooze fest. I also can't skip through banter, which, fine, it's normal, but when characters are talking, I'm limited in the actions I can do. I can't open the map, the pause menu, or use Duma's scan ability, which is very irritating. It didn't help that the general theme of the narrative is a bit too cliché. I had little interest in the antagonists and their grand evil plot. In fact, this is when I started to zone out because some principles of the world started to get real wild. So my suspensions of disbelief was, well, suspended. That said, I still enjoyed it for the most part because I liked the cast of characters. Seeing their relationship with each other grow as they work together to solve the smaller conflicts of the world were much more palatable and interesting. As a big fan of Star Ocean: The Second Story, I also couldn't help noticing some similarities with it, such as the two different starting protagonists. While the general plot remains the same, the point of view that the story is being told from differs depending on the selected character. There are unique scenes, slight differences in dialogue, and different characters that can join. Their origins also remind me a bit of Claude and Reyna. The male protagonist Ray finds himself stuck on an underdeveloped planet and immediately meets a native, the female protagonist Leticia. And since I'm on the topic of blasts from the past, it would be criminal not to talk about Star Ocean's primary bonding system, private actions. It's something I've always had mixed feelings about. On one hand, it's nice to be able to take time out to see a character have a more intimate one-on-one session that can't be done when they're always in a group. The connections created in such a way feels a lot more natural and realistic. Seeing Albard trying to come out of his shell with Ray was hilarious. Though awkward, their genuine attempts to build a good friendship eventually led to the birth of a beautiful friendship. On the other hand, missing these private actions can lead to characters feeling underdeveloped and bland. Maybe the characters have great stories to tell, but I would never know if I miss out. I still have so many questions about some of the cast that I assume will get resolved in their private actions. At the very least, this system is a lot better from what I've remembered. With fast travel and the party automatically splitting up when entering towns, it's very easy to move around and check for private actions without much effort. With so many improvements in this latest Star Ocean game, I see it as a beacon of hope for the series and the developers. It took me 40 hours to beat, and while not every moment was spent enjoying my time, a good portion of it was. There was a nice balance between the gameplay and the story where my interest in either wouldn't wane too much. I started with Ray's story and really liked how his character turned out. He would go on to form strong friendships with all his companions, but the first initial relationship was strictly business. Ray helps Leticia with her tasks, while Leticia uses her knowledge of the world to help Ray find his friends. This interaction is something I can relate to more than the usually overly altruistic characters who help anyone they find. It's great to see Tri-Ace coming out with something serviceable, and I hope this will be a good step towards getting them out of their rut both financially and figuratively. I look forward to seeing more games come out from them, and hope you do too.